It's Daybreak on Arise News, and it's time for the press review, a first look at what's on the front pages with analysis of the big stories. And we'll begin with our sister publication, as usual. This day, the newspaper of record, it is focusing this morning on the aftermath of the Adamawa elections. After foiling a brazen electoral coup, INEC declares Fintiri re-elected. IGP replaces the Adamawa police commissioner, moves to probe malfeasance. INEC writes police demands prosecution of Ari, that's the resident electoral commissioner, who illegally declared an outcome of that election. Well, how court declined Binani's emergency application. PDP, what happened was akin to attempted civilian coup. Yaga wants all security personnel involved in electoral fraud tried. Situation Room pushes for fresh electoral reforms. Atiku, governor's party leadership congratulate winner. Above the masthead of this day this morning, operators seek alignment between the NUPRC and the NMDPRA. Those are regulators in Nigeria's oil and gas industry. That's the Upstream Commission and the Downstream Authority. Other stories on the front page of our sister publication this morning. Court nullifies Buhari's removal of Ararume as NNPCL chairman. And of course, the Chamber of Commerce in Lagos says high interest rates, inflationary pressure, FX scarcity hurting manufacturing sector. These and many more. You can pick a copy of our sister publication this morning to get details.
Let's take a look at the Punch newspaper this morning. Leading headline, Adamawa Governor Fintiri floors Binani, INEC takes Rex case to President Buhari. Fintiri polls 430,861 votes to defeat APC candidate and 13 others. PDP supporters are jubilating. Binani says, I didn't pay 2 billion naira for declaration as courts reject request to stop results. Those leading photos there are from Adamawa State yesterday. The People's Democratic supporters celebrating the victory of Governor Fintiri. Above the nameplate of the Punch this morning, striking workers begin shutdown next week. That's on page 12.
Let's take a look at what the Guardian newspaper is saying. It's saying it's time for the courts. All eyes on judiciary as Nigerians await hearing on election petitions. That's found on page 9. And there you see Fintiri, the PDP governor in Adamawa State. He laughs last. Reckless REC faces prosecution. Court voids Olomo's parks and garages. Revalidates RTEAN. That's from the Guardian.
Well, the Daily Sun is also leading with the Adamawa election. Fintiri wins Guba as heads continue to roll. Polls 430,788 to defeat APC candidate who garnered 398,788 votes. IGP removes police commissioner. INEC asks IGP to investigate, prosecute the resident electoral commissioner. Buhari to commission second Niger bridge before May 29. That's coming from Professor Gambari, who is the president's chief of staff. Aviation workers locked out of offices as unions lay siege to Lagos International Airport. Well, chaos. And court nullifies Ararume's removal as an NNPC board chair awards 5 billion naira in damages on the front page of the Daily Sun.
The Nigerian Tribune this morning, still on Adamawa INEC 6 probe, prosecution of Adamawa wreck, writes IGP SGF. With 32,073 votes margin, Fintiri floors Binani, and INEC declares him Adamawa governor-elect. Just below there, aviation workers give the federal government 7-day ultimatum, heavy security presence at Lagos Airport. Above the nameplate of Nigerian Tribune this morning, court voids Ararume's sack as the NNPCL's non-executive chairman. Meanwhile, Abroy gets 12-month extension as Labour Party next suspends Apapa and 5 others.
Now let's look at the international newspapers. We'll start with The Guardian, International Guardian. 3 interesting stories there, jump at you. UK must not pull shelters down on China. Cleverly won stories. And Fox, which is last minute $787 million deal on libel suit. And you see him standing there. Russian judge rejects Gershkovich's U.S. journalist's appeal.
Well, the Financial Times leads on the news that investment bank Goldman Sachs suffered an 18% drop in profits for the first quarter following an underperformance as its fixed income trading unit.
All right, for the press preview, let's bring in Emmanuel Bello, who joins us now. Good morning, Emmanuel. Thanks for joining us this morning. Let's take a look at what's going on the front pages. All our national dailies have the same stories at Adamawa. It's been almost a month of suspension in the state. Why was it declared inconclusive? Who won? Who did not win? 2 days ago, we had the APC candidate in that state, Binani, giving a speech, a sort of, in quote, acceptance speech when she was illegally declared by the REC in that state. And I think the headline on the front of this day puts it in perspective, really, for us. It says, after foiling a brazen electoral coup, INEC declares Fintiri re-elected. Emmanuel, what are your general thoughts on this whole issue that went down in Adamawa State?
Yes, this day report, pretty much summed it up, summed the situation up, especially calling it a brazen electoral coup, because that was what happened. I mean, that declaration by the APC candidate, was roundly condemned by NNPC. So it's a victory for INEC foiling that coup, but it's also a victory for the judiciary because yesterday the courts also pulled a very interesting one. That is not getting a lot of reportage, but Binani failed to get a court to stop the collation. That's a good one. A lot of people gave judiciary, big ups on that. So. But at the end of it, I think everyone will be asking himself what really happened. I think the Guardian newspaper tried to also capture all of that when he said Fintiri laughed last, and that it's talking about the heads that we roll and all of that. Tells you how endemic, how problematic our elections have become, and a lot of people will be wanting to see what will happen, going forward. Will there be prosecutions? Will people, for instance, the Commissioner of Police was redeployed yesterday. So some people are calling for more punitive measures, concrete things that will be on ground to forestall all what we all have to go through. So when people were rejoicing yesterday, it wasn't just about Fintiri, it wasn't just about Binani. It's just that people are just fed up with all those judicial rascality, the collusion of INEC and people and all of that, the use of federal might unduly, which the APC has come to represent. Using federal might, the much talk about federal might to be able to say things like, well, we can do what we want to do and get away with it because we've got some backing from the top. So people were just happy that all of that was trying to play out, but didn't achieve what is said to do. Remember that Binani in her failed declaration of, in a fraudulent declaration speech, actually thanked the president for supporting her. So those are the sort of things that people are happy with the defeat of all of that. And so though it's a very small advanced story, one state, it's something that concerns all of us. And I think the whole country kidding, which is why probably almost all the newspapers have it on the cover.
You talked about the courts. Let's go to the Guardian and discuss the judiciary. It says, all eyes on judiciary now as Nigerians await hearing of election petitions. And that small story of Fintiri raising his fingers, but that's not what I want to talk about. Court voids Olomos, parks and garages, revalidates RTAN.
Yes, the Guardian has a very good story. It's tying it up with what's really happened, because a bit of what happened in Adamawa yesterday was the effort the judiciary made in voiding, not trying to void the democratic process. So yes, all eyes, the Guardian is right, all eyes are on the judiciary now to see what will happen. And again, I just believe that after this period, maybe we'll get it right in such a way that, we won't be having this sort of situation where, people will actually practically win maybe on the field or lose on the field, and then the courts we say a different thing. It just tells you the pains that our, the hiccups in our electoral system, where the court again will have to decide eventually, will be the deciding, factor in what has happened. But again, it's also because of all that has happened on the field. The fact that sometimes INEC doesn't get its job done well, and of course, it's up to the courts to interpret. The big one, the presidential election, you need to see indeed the kind of sons they are all gathering to go to. They are going to spend millions, if not close to billions of legal fees in trying to deal with that. For instance, the OB has 19 sons. But in this story, they were enumerating those sons, and to some extent, even the cost of what will happen at the judiciary. But again, yes, we're where we are now, looking out to the courts to decide some of these things that could have been just done if we had some kind of transparency, or even the kind of proper leadership that the umpire was supposed to, present at the field. I won't be having to wait again and get some kind of closure from what the courts are doing. But that's where we are, and that's what the Guardian is reporting, that it's now up to the courts.
Indeed, Emmanuel, let's turn to the front page of the Punch this morning above the masthead, talking about the aviation workers' strike. That's a recurring story as well on some of the front pages this morning. And the Punch is reporting that the striking workers will begin airport shutdown next week. How significant is this? Do you think this can be averted? And while we're seeing this recurring strikes in the aviation sector, but still on that same line, Emmanuel, just to touch on politics a bit more, National Assembly leadership, APC Working Committee awaits Tinubu Adamu's meeting. That's President-elect and, of course, the national chairman of the party. Is this learning from the mistakes of the past, where President Muhammadu Buhari refuses to intervene in the national leadership of the National Assembly? And of course, it cost the party in 2015. We do remember what happened. Is this Tinubu trying to learn from that? What do you think they're going to decide at this meeting? If you had a crystal ball, what do you think this meeting is about?
Well, I think it's about what the APC has been scared of all along, that, look, it can be upstaged. There could be, some kind of offset and upset in the way it's doing, in the leadership of the National Assembly, where in the past we've seen, the National Assembly, the opposition party is actually pulling a hat trick on the ruling party as far as leadership is concerned. This is a fear they've been expressing since last week, and looking at what the opposition is calling greater majority, and saying that, look, they can actually, cause an upset in that, in the leadership. So I think this is the fears, and yes, people are waiting for. But you see, again, maybe we're just down that same road, at this one. The fact that the party is awaiting Tinubu. Tinubu himself, a lot of people saying nobody has seen him anywhere. It's not there. So the kind of urgency and the kind of seriousness we want with governance in this country and around issues like this, sometimes you don't get to see it. They are actually waiting for the party chair and the president-elect, and they can be found. So waiting for their meetings, whether they're going to have these meetings, when or how they're going to have them, no one knows. So these are some of the kind of issues that you would think that a serious party or a serious government should be able to be, those are things that, routine things that they should be able to understand from the start. But over here, it drags on, and just tells you how terrible the politics is. The aviation workers, well, we joked about it yesterday, that for those of us who don't do a lot of flight, but yes, it's serious. We're talking about the economy, we're talking about aviation industry. Again, it is the lack of, whether you like it or not, the leadership in that situation that is caused all of that. And if you look at what is going to cost this economy in the few days or so that they are going to be away, you understand that it's going to not only about social lives and interaction, but also big businesses, not only for the aviation sector, but almost every other sector that depends on, those kind of, that mode of transportation, to connect, to have meetings, to decide things. So lives are going to be, of course, affected. We already see passengers stranded and people cannot reconnect. It's going to be the cellular period period where people need to move around to loved ones and everything. So yeah, it's going to cause a serious, we're going to have, the human angle of it is going to be there, but of course the business side too of what the cost of these aviation strikes will be very, very profound.
Emmanuel Bello, when we talk about all that has happened during the Nigerian general election, an underlying tone is always sort of the adherence or non-adherence of due process. The next story that I want us to touch about speaks to the importance of following due process. It's a story about the Ararume. It's on the front page of Nigerian Tribune, and this day the court has voided Ararume's sack as NNPC's PCL's non-executive chairman. Now, the judge says his reasoning behind that is that the president did not follow due process in that sack. And he also went ahead not only saying that Ararume should be installed immediately, he also annulled every choice that has been made by the board that was established following Ararume's dismissal. Now, let's not forget that the NNPC is not a joke. This is a huge company that does businesses internationally, and experts are saying that, look, this decision is just going to reduce the trust of the international community when it comes to doing business with Nigeria, where you have decisions that have been made being rescinded because of a suspension or a court's order. And we also, following the trajectory of this government, know that, well, we expect that they will seek an appeal for this judgment and sort of try to stay the execution. What are your thoughts on the dynamics of this case?
Yeah, well, you see, you're right. So when you just look at it, even on the face value of this story, the fact that, look, the president said one thing and then the court said another thing, tells you the serious disconnect in the system and the unseriousness around very important issues like that. So yes, it might just be one man struggling to get justice. But again, the larger picture is all that you and I are facing: the lack of due process, the crisis of leadership itself that we keep talking about, the fact that probably the president doesn't have all his facts on ground before instituting the kind of action he did, and the fact that his actions avoided. But again, on the other hand, it's also a reflection of what the judiciary is trying to do, the kind of justice and the kind of impartiality that the judiciary is trying to establish in some of these things. So whether it is the rascality of the executive in taking actions or the courts trying to just help us understand how things are done. It's an interesting story, and you are right. It is the institution itself where this is happening. The NNPC. It's not a place where you should be having some of this kind of back and forth between people who are supposed to be working for the government and, of course, the governance. The government itself tells you the serious disconnect and the disruption in the system, if you wish. But again, tells us that the judiciary always, in the end of the day, at the end of the day, try to give us some kind of glimmer of hope, like we saw in the Adama case, where the judiciary got it right. And of course, Guardian doing a big story and saying we're looking at that same judiciary to see whether we can actually bring some kind of closure to the grievances out there, especially in the political space.
All right, before we let you go, just a bit interesting in the Sun, on the front page of the Sun. Buhari to commission second Niger bridge before May 29. This is coming from Gambari, his chief of staff, after so many years. Emmanuel, just in a bit.
Yeah, well, it looks like a good story, and I think Buhari has been trying to, the administration has been trying to see what they can do to rewrite their history and look good in the eyes of the people, so that they can go down history as anything. But I think the jury is out there that this government has not done what it's supposed to do. There's no time we'll have looked at the Fox settlement, which affects all of us, the crisis of elections and the role of the media. I think that's what that story is talking about. Fox, forced to settle out of court, and all of that tells you indeed the kind of serious burden of proof that we as practitioners we have to put in place, especially as we talk about elections, talk about due process, and talk about this whole thing. But yes, again, the judiciary or the courts being a very, very important plank in deciding what people should do and the kind of justice that we should have in place. place, whether it's in elections or the kind of job that we do.
In the borrowed words of Professor Akitenwa, you cannot be more correct. Manuel Bello, thank you so much for your analysis as always.